Hey, party people. I'm Lia Scholl, pastor of First Friends here in Greensboro, North Carolina, and I am so grateful that you've taken some time to be with me today. I'm having technical difficulties, so this video is being filmed on Zoom, and we will try to make it work, right? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. Today we are talking about calling. The title of the sermon is The Calling of Everyone. And I wonder if Don Durham ever talked to y'all about Will Campbell. Will was from Mississippi, a Baptist preacher at only one congregation in Mississippi sometime in the 1950s, and the only white person in the room when Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s Southern Christian Leadership Council was formed. Will was at one of the colleges in Mississippi when it desegregated, and there's a famous picture of him playing ping pong with the first Black student there. Later, Will visited all the Black folks in jail because of protests in Alabama. And key here, though, is that when he visited the Black folks in jail, he also visited the KKK members, knowing that God doesn't love any one of them more than the other. There's a story in his book, Brother to a Dragonfly, where he goes out hunting with his pastor friend and mentor. They try to shoot doves, but miss, and the pastor friend mentor starts cussing up a storm. After all the expletives, Will turns to the pastor friend and says, "Why are you a preacher?" And the pastor friend mentor says, "Because I was called, gosh darn it. Because I was called, gosh darn it." Obviously, he didn't say gosh darn it. Abraham and Sarah were called too, gosh darn it. God said, "Go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse, and all peoples on earth will be blessed through you." So, just who is called? Well, the truth is everybody. The answer is just that easy. We're all called to, as they say in our godly playroom, be God's helper. How are we called? Well, your mileage may vary, but there's a lot of calling and a lot of calling stories in the Bible. Abram and Sarah, but we also have Moses and Esther and Joshua and Naomi and Nathan. I could go on and on in the Hebrew Bible. The New Testament tells us of the calling of Mary, the mother of Jesus, of all the disciples being called, and also the rich young ruler, and Nicodemus, and Mary Magdalene, Paul, and Timothy. Dare I say that there are few people in the Bible who aren't called? But we certainly have folks in there who aren't following their calling. I think of people like Lot and Pharaoh and David when it comes to Bathsheba, maybe Ahab and Jezebel, and a lot of the kings. Some of the prophets even tried to duck out. Jonah ended up in the belly of a whale because he refused his calling. Same in the New Testament. A whole host of politicians, including Pilate and Herod, maybe Judas and Peter when he denied Jesus. Y'all, calling is hard. Being led by God is hard. But there's something so powerful about following your calling, about being led, that's really, really, really good. Here are some common myths about calling. Myth number one: my job is my calling. Jobs, as you may know, are a relatively new concept, only since the industrial age. Prior to that, you went into your family's trade. Now, jobs seem so much to be a part of our identity. And y'all, they are not our identity. Our life's work is more than our job. Myth number two: my calling is my task list. This goal-oriented society places a premium on productivity. You have an inherent list of things you're supposed to do: graduate from school, get a job, get married, have children. Calling is more than that. It is more than the obligations we've accepted or been given. Myth number 3 is that my calling must be grandiose. Maybe you've heard the God-sized plan myth. We begin to dream up the biggest, sexiest, flashiest, most dramatic goal we can. This has been popularized by Western Christianity, which loves celebrity and success. Even Abram's calling seems to be tied up in this idea of celebrity. When the Bible says that Abram will be made famous, I think it means more that Abram will be known, not famous. The Hebrew there. Myth number 4 is that my calling means doing one thing for the rest of my life. That is so totally wrong. Your calling will be something you live out in multiple contexts, and the calling will change over time. I have often found that with women, it seems like calling seems to unfold. So you didn't know you could do that, and so that's unfolding, and there's a part of your calling, and then that piece unfolds, and there's another piece of your calling. I think in church calling, when it comes to clergy callings, men seem to be more sure of themselves. And so sort of the calling just comes and plops down in their lap. But for women, I haven't found that to be true. Myth number 5 is that being a professional Christian, i.e. a pastor or an evangelist, is a higher calling. We all know that that's not true. Untrue, as a matter of fact. Peter was called to be a disciple of Jesus, then called to be the rock upon which Jesus built the ecclesia, and he went back to fishing afterwards, right? It just isn't, there's just nothing better about being called to be a pastor than there is about being called to do anything. So now let's examine some of the excuses we use not to follow our callings. The first is, I'm not talented enough. See, calling connects our deepest talents, some of which are yet untapped. And all the rest of it is information. So it's like you say you're not talented enough, but God gifts the called. God doesn't call the gifted, God gifts the called. Another excuse we use is that I'm just not smart enough, right? Y'all, you can learn. You may not know enough about what your calling is, but you have the capacity to learn, and you can learn. Another excuse used is, I'm not wealthy enough. I like to think about the Wright brothers and Amazon and Hewlett Packard and Disney and Mattel and so many more. They all started in a garage. And they built into great big things, right? But the people who started those didn't necessarily have a lot of wealth ahead of time. But I want to bring up something here, that sometimes our calling gets mixed in with the world's idea of privilege. And this is certainly one of them. We've all heard that stock phrase, do what you love and the money will follow. That kind of makes me want to yell all those same expletives that Will Campbell heard on that hunting trip. Don't follow that advice about doing what you love and the money will follow, unless you don't mind being poor, don't mind having a few jobs alongside your calling. If you already have a trust fund, then go for it. Or if you have found a sugar daddy or a sugar mama to take care of you, then go for it. But that phrase, do what you love and the money will follow, reeks of privilege, of magical thinking, and is just plain misleading. Another Another excuse that we use not to follow God is that we're not holy enough. Whatever. Here I am in front of you, and I can tell you that calling and holiness are really not connected. I'm definitely not holy enough to be your pastor, and yet here I am, fully convinced that I am called and have been led by God to be here. So, Quakers are really good at this about what we do to find our calling. We do that thing that Quakers do. We listen for God's ongoing revelation to us, to God's voice. It can come through others, it can come through prayer, it can come through opportunity. We just have to listen because there are signs that we are to be doing what our calling is. Another thing we do to find our calling is we follow. We try things, we experiment. Does this feel like it fits? Does it seem like the right place to be? I love the saying, do one thing that scares you every day. And as we're trying to find our calling, sometimes doing that thing that scares you puts you right in the place where you are following God. The third thing is to seek others on a path. Um, there is always energy brewed by those who are following their path. It's like if you are around people who are following their calling, it kind of rubs off on you. And somehow you can find your own calling, seeing what they do and seeing where their passion lies. And you just get a vision for what that looks like. And then you can notice when you feel that way yourself. And finally, you just got to trust that you're going to get there. A seminary professor once exclaimed in class when a student expressed that they were afraid that they had missed their calling. My seminary professor said, "What kind of God would lead you astray?" That's the idea that we can trust God to lead us to where we need to be. There is a poem, a prayer actually uh, that was shared actually last week, or maybe it was the week before that in the unprogrammed service, and I wanted to share it with you. Um, and so it goes like this, and there's a song with it too that I may post a link with so you could hear it. But the prayer says this: "Oh Lord God, I have no idea where I am going. I do not see the road ahead of me. I cannot know for certain where it will end, nor do I really know myself. And the fact that I think that I am following your will does not mean that I am actually doing so. But I believe that the desire to please you does, in fact, please you. And I hope I have that desire in all that I am doing. I hope that I will never do anything apart from that desire to please you. And I know that if I do this, you will lead me by the right road, though I may know nothing about it. Therefore, I will trust you always, though I may seem to be lost and in the shadow of death. I will not fear, for you are ever with me, and you will never leave me to make my journey alone." I love y'all, and I love being your pastor, and I hope to see you soon.